Hi, I'm Pip Waller and this is Being Human. This video is to introduce a small series about how to do the shamanic dream journey, what it is, how to do it. So the first thing is this, which is an introduction. So the shamanic dream journey, I learned this method from a fabulous man called Michael Garner, who was an anthropologist, studied anthropology, and he was doing, I think, his doctorate in the 50s in the Amazon, and he was quite a young man, and he got involved in a serious initiation ritual ceremony with some indigenous people, and he had a powerful shamanic experience, a powerful spiritual experience, like an awakening of something happened. He had a window, a door opened into what he would later come to call non-ordinary reality, which you could also call the spirit world. Now, it's quite interesting because he'd been trained as a scientist. You know, another person might have just dismissed it and thought, oh, it was just a hallucination, it was nothing, it didn't mean anything. But actually he, as a scientist, thought, something actually happened there. What was it? He had such a powerful experience that he knew something had actually happened, something had changed in him from the experience. So he set about then studying shamanism. It's come to be called shamanism, but of course that word shaman, it's a difficult word because it comes from a particular place, the medicine people, the healers, the spiritual healers of peoples of Siberia area. So, but every indigenous peoples has somebody that could be called like what we now in the West think of as a shaman. It means a healer, usually always actually in indigenous people, part of a lineage, a long lineage where they had a teacher and they were trained. They had a calling. That means they had some kind of gift and the spirits chose them and they had some kind of an awakening, and then they also had a training, often very, very long, very difficult, very rigorous and vigorous training, which often meant facing death really. So in fact it's interesting because indigenous people, they don't clamour to be a shaman, but there's something kind of glamorous about the idea of shamanism now. I don't know if it's just the glamour, it's probably the glamour of power, which in our culture we're very attached to, the glamour of power. But there's something else, which is our deep hunger for spiritual connection. So I just want to be clear that what I'm talking about with the shamanic dream journey, it's not deep shamanism, it's not the shamanism of the ancestral traditions. It's what you could call ordinary earth-based shamanism, or household shamanism has been used to describe it, which really means it's a technique that anyone can use who wants to deepen their own connection with non-ordinary reality, with their guides, with the help that's available on the energy realm. It's like a way of entering in a waking state into the dream world. So Michael Garner, he studied all over the world, looked at indigenous peoples all over the world and found that there were certain things that were similar in what everybody did. And one of those was the use of a drum and a certain rhythm, something like this. Something like that speed. It could be slower, some people go a bit more slowly, some people go more fast. A certain number of beats. I think it's usually said to be something like 180 to 240 beats per minute. And what Michael Garner did a lot of research, and he found that particular rhythm puts our brain into theta waves, increases the theta waves of the brain, which is the way that the brain is operating, the electrical activity in our brain when we're in a trance state. So the drum, people use the drum all over the world in order to encourage the trance state, the state of trance. And it's that state of trance that we want to enter in order to enter into the dream reality, the shamanic reality, the spirit world. Now, I love Michael Garner came up with lots of great words, like he called the ordinary world that we live in, the day-to-day physical realm, ordinary reality. And the spirit world, or the world we enter in the journey, he called it non-ordinary reality. And I like those words. They're kind of non-threatening as well, and an interesting way to think about things. So he also found that in looking at all the various peoples, that non-ordinary reality is kind of arranged in a certain way, a bit like the computer games are now arranged, like very many levels and layers. And out of all his studies, what Michael Harner did is he created a kind of a way, a very user-friendly way to learn to do the shamanic dream journey and enter that non-ordinary reality for ourselves. Because what it's really about is building up our own experience, our own connection, and our own communication with that world. And so there's a very particular method, the Michael Harner method of doing the shamanic drum journey, which is what I'm going to be teaching and explaining. And so here's how he encapsulated it, Michael Harner. He talked about this world that we operate in. This is called the middle world. And as well as our ordinary reality, on the middle world here there exists a non-ordinary reality. That would be the place where you could see fairies or ghosts, departed souls, or their auras or spirit energy that you might see that's here in the world with us, but not that you see with your ordinary eyes. That would be in the middle world. But there's also, when you enter the dream journey and you enter into non-ordinary reality, there's an upper world that you go up in a certain way to get to, and a lower world that you go down in a certain way to get to. So in the future I'll be doing more explanations of these. But for now, the first journey that it's really useful to do for everyone is to go to the lower world, journey to the lower world to meet with your power animal. Now, power animal means the energy of an animal in, how can we say it, the spirit of an animal. There are tribes that say if you've got a good power animal with you, then you can never die. That's how important it is to them. So it's like having a best friend, you know. I guess in our culture, in our modern sort of secular culture, the closest people have to it is like an invisible friend when they're a child, but they're thought of as just being made up by your imagination or your mind. Whereas the indigenous peoples know that these power animals and guides that come to us from non-ordinary reality, they actually do exist here in the middle world, but you can't see them with your ordinary eye. And when you build up your relationship with your power animal or power animals, then they're with you all the time. And you can also, you get strength from them. You can ask them for help with questions, with healing, with just the feeling of not being alone, having strong allies. So, the power animal journey, the thing about the journey is that you always, when you go on a shamanic journey, you always set your intention very clearly. So the first journey that I'm going to describe how to do is going to be, the intention is going to be, I'm going to the lower world to meet with my power animal. Now, a word about the lower world. The lower world isn't hell or something weird. In fact, maybe because the lower world's very earthy. Generally, when you go down to the lower world, you come out in landscapes. The landscapes of the lower world in non-ordinary reality, they're very, very natural. They might be mountains, deserts, forests, sea, river, things that will remind you of this world, of the natural world here. So perhaps over time, when our Western recent ancestors had been quite, they'd had their spiritual reality quite sort of warped really by centuries of a not very high level Christianity, that where the religion had been actually used to control rather than to enrich the spiritual life of people. And also there was all that weird stuff that the Christians got into about hell, and they associated our own indigenous traditions, our pagan traditions of these islands, and the European traditions were associated with the devil and with hell, and therefore the lower world. People sometimes think, oh, is that something evil? It absolutely isn't. We go to the lower world to feel at home in our natural environments, and also to meet with our guides of that from the animal kingdom, and also to meet with our plant spirit allies. There will be other things coming in the future. So I think that's enough for one video. Thank you for listening. This is Pip Waller, being human, and this is the first one in a series about the shamanic dream journey.